S&P rankings are on the rise, some fee increases that are good for customers, and we're going to rank our best buys now. With 50% poor plaid, this is where the money is. Hi, I'm Allison Southwick, and I'm joined with Matt Koppenheffer and Dave Hansen. And as always, we're going to start with the day's headlines. So first up, the New York Times conducted some research, and they found out that the S&P Standard & Poor's is actually giving out more favorable rankings than the ratings than the competition, even while the government, they're fighting a lawsuit from the government about it offering inflated ratings, which led to our whole financial crisis, right? So, David, what's going on here?
No surprise. It's the same story again, giving more favorable ratings to get more business, and that's just the problem with this business model. There's inherent conflicts of interest when you have the banks who are issuing securities and bundling securities, and they have to go out and get these ratings in order to get them to even be offered to some investors who need that stamp of approval on there. It's just a conflict of interest. So when I think about the stocks, McGraw-Hill, which owns Standard & Poor's and Moody's, I'm not sure this is a business model that I'm excited to hold for the next 5-10 years. I'm sure there should be some regulation, I think, around good regulation, not over-regulation.
But they're not talking about Moody's here. So don't you think maybe Moody's turned the page and compared to S&P that they're more accurate, giving more accurate ratings?
It's possible, but I think this also highlights how quick we can return to old habits. So many of these mortgage-backed securities that are non-agency have just been sworn off, said they're never coming back. CDOs are never coming back. And we're starting to see a little bit of these securities trickle back into the market, and we're also starting to see some of these same old problems that we had before. So when I think about this from a stock perspective, owning these rating agencies, I'm not that excited about holding them. And I think your boy Warren Buffett, he's been trimming he's been trimming his position in Moody's. I'm not sure if that's a taking profits thing or he sees this as a long.
He didn't call you to let you know.
He didn't call me. He owes me a call. But just from a stock perspective, I'm not that interested in these businesses long term.
All right, so next up, Wall Street Journal is reporting that Bank of America is going to revamp some Merrill Lynch fees for their customers that have so-called managed accounts. These accounts, the fees could go up more than 50%, and the thundering herd of advisors, as they're called, is pushing back because they say they're going to lose customers. So rising fees are always bad for customers, right, Matt?
Well, I mean, yeah. If you're a customer here and your fees are going to go up as a result of this change, I mean, that's obviously not good news. For the advisors, it's also maybe not good news because if they lose clients as a result of clients having to pay more, that's bad. For the company, maybe that's bad if they start. So this sounds like a lot of bad news. What I take away from this, though, is the use and the focus on the managed accounts. So one of the big problems with financial advisory is that it's been so heavily dependent historically on commissions, on commission-generating accounts. And that is terrible for customers for so many reasons. I don't even want to get into it here because I can spend all day talking about all the ways that that's awful for customers. So I love the idea that B of A is even if it's charging more, I mean, that's not great, but that it's shifting its focus, that it's increasing its focus on these fee-based managed accounts.
Right.
All right, so final headline is Reuters is reporting that there's yet another bill making its way through the House that is going to reform FHA, the Federal Housing Administration. So, David, what's this bill going to do?
Right, it can get a little confusing these days with all these bills that are sloshing through Congress that have to do with housing finance. So this is the Johnson-Crapo bill, which, like you said, aims at the FHA. We also have the Corker-Warner bill, which aims at the FHFA, as well as Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac winding those down. And we also have Congressman Jeb Hensarling, a Republican who's aiming to wind those two entities down as well, or those three, and completely eliminate the government's hand in the housing finance market. Update for those interested in the common shares of Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, not much has changed. They're still under conservatorship through the FHFA. Common shareholders, it doesn't look like there's a clear path to those entities being reprivatized right now. It's still very much a speculation play, one that I know Matt is very opposed to. I'm on board with him. I don't think these are something that individual investors without big attorneys behind them battling the government in certain cases should necessarily be a part of.
For people who don't like to sleep, those are fine stocks to invest in.
Exactly. I think they're still up some 500% this year, but they haven't, once that speculation kind of hit, they haven't done much since. It's really just been it's a day trader stock, really. This isn't necessarily something long-term foolish investors should be a part of.
All right, so that's it for the headlines. It's time for a deep dive. AIG releases their earnings later today. And Matt, I want to know what you're going to be looking for.
So I don't think anything that we're going to hear today is necessarily going to change the big picture investment thesis at AIG. One thing I'm going to be looking for is we've heard so much about ILFC, the aircraft leasing business at AIG. The plan had been to sell it off to a group of Chinese buyers, and that sort of hit the rocks. And there's speculation now, there's been speculation, but sort of growing, that that's not going to go through and that AIG is going to have to IPO this business instead. I don't think that's that big of a deal. I think that would be a fine course of action for AIG as well. The key is that it's continuing to rationalize the core business, get back to the property casualty insurance, the mortgage insurance, the life insurance that is at the core of its business. Speaking of, I will also be looking at the results from those businesses, particularly the combined ratios of the property casualty insurance. In the first quarter, we saw some big improvements, some nice numbers on the combined ratios. And I should define that. That is the amount of basically the amount of costs that come out of the premiums, that the revenue that the insurance businesses are taking in. So if you have a 100% combined ratio, it means you're not profitable. You're essentially generating zero on your insurance operations. If you're under 100%, then you're generating profit on your insurance operations. We would like to see AIG under 100.
Of course.
Making money.
I would agree. Looking at those numbers is definitely important for AIG going forward. I'm also going to want to hear just some of the qualitative aspects that Robert Benmosche, the CEO, has to say about the culture there. Obviously, the brand took a bit of a hit during the financial crisis, and it probably wasn't a super popular place to tell at a neighborhood barbecue that you work for AIG. So I want to hear, what's the culture that they're establishing right now? Are people happy to work there? We may not hear that on the call. It kind of harkens back to Jamie Dimon's comments a couple of weeks ago that was saying, you guys focus so much on the accounting, you guys meaning analysts, talk about the culture, talk about the client-driven business. So I'm hoping that AIG will step back from the numbers, which are certainly important to the story, but also just talk about the culture there.
All right.
What I will say, too, about Benmosche, love this guy. I think he's a great leader. He's been great on these conference calls, whether it be at investor presentations or quarterly conference calls. I've found them to be clear. I've found them to be informative, to be helpful. When so many conference calls appear to be over-scripted, the CEOs sound like robots, I think AIG's conference calls are a great listen, and I think investors will actually get a lot out of listening to them. One final thought on things to look at: investment portfolio. We've seen a lot of investment portfolios take a hit because of the fixed income environment. Last quarter, AIG had some good performance from its investment portfolio. In particular, it saw some big gains from its alternative investments. So this will be something for investors to watch as well when they report later today.
All right. Next up, we got a little game we call Rank It. We want to know your best buys now. I'm going to list 5 stocks, and I want to hear which ones you love down to which ones you maybe love a little less or downright hate, right? So the stocks we're looking at: AIG, Berkshire Hathaway, Bank of America, JP Morgan, and Annaly Capital. Matt, do you want to go first?
I do want to go first, and I will start it off, maybe not too surprising since Warren Buffett is my boy.
Boy.
Berkshire Hathaway, right at the top. Right at the top. The stock isn't necessarily overly cheap today. It had been for the last couple of years. It's been a great time to buy Berkshire Hathaway over the last couple of years. What I look at today is I think it's a great business. I think it's a great business to own for the long term. I think you can reasonably expect 8% on the order of 8% returns, say over the next 5 or 10 years. And I think that is a great thing for investors from a stock that you don't have to worry about too much. Second on my list, we were just talking about AIG. AIG right there at number 2, 0.68 times tangible book value. That's what the stock is trading at today. That is cheap. I think this is a good business. I think Benmosche has done a great job bringing this back. My number 2 buy. And much higher returns opportunity at AIG versus Berkshire Hathaway, I should say. JP Morgan, number 3. A lot of reputational risk here. It's been in the news a lot. That doesn't make me happy. It doesn't make me feel good as a JP Morgan shareholder, but I think this is a great collection of businesses. I think this is more than a fair price that it's trading at today. So I think we'll see good returns from that in the coming years. Bank of America, number 4. more problems to get through at Bank of America, attractive valuation, I think long-term potential, but it hasn't been, it's not clear yet that they will get there. So that's why that's at number 4. Annaly, number 5. I'm not a big fan of the mortgage REIT business model, so that's why Annaly's down here. If I had to buy a mortgage REIT, Annaly would probably be it. It would be among my top 2. David?
All right.
All right, we're gonna differ on opinion.
Let's mix it up.
I bet
Shocker there. So my first one I got is J.P. Morgan Chase. Like Matt said, a lot of reputational headlines around here. It doesn't make you feel good as a person, but that kind of makes me feel good as an investor. I think a lot of people they don't want to hold this stock, whether that be retail investors. They kind of see it as an evil bank, perhaps. And also a lot of institutional investors, people that we say, these are the most genius people in the world. A lot of these people have sworn off the banks as well, saying, oh, they're too complicated, I'll never understand them. I think all that pessimism has made that an attractive bank. I see it as the best in breed of the big banks, even better than Wells Fargo, perhaps, from a stock perspective. From a stock perspective, I think the trade-off of the valuation is very attractive there. My second one is Annaly Capital. Like Matt said, he's not a fan of this business model. It's a business model that's fairly easily replicated. It's not something that you could never start. This is a fairly skinny moat business.
I just started one before we started this show.
So there's
I now have 3 mortgage REITs that I'm running.
So it's not like it has a huge barriers.
How are you doing?
That's terrible.
So like he said, if he were to buy one, it'd be Annaly. I actually do own Annaly. This is one of the oldest mortgage REITs out there, so it's been through a lot. I think right now the valuation is very attractive. It's at some of the cheapest valuations it's had in 15 years or something like that. So it's very cheap right now. I think it's attractive. AIG is my third one. Again, piggybacking off what Matt said, this is a cheap stock. It's a turnaround story. Potential for good returns here, but there is that risk there. It's still not 100% guaranteed that this is going to be a great insurance company in the long run. And as that valuation moves closer to 1x tangible book, it starts to get a little bit more focus on, will the business deliver? Number 4, Berkshire Hathaway. So your first is my fourth. It's not that I don't think it's a good stock. I just think the 3 that I mentioned before offer better risk return from a valuation perspective. Berkshire is richly valued, and it's justified to be richly valued, in my opinion. They've earned that reputation. They've grown book value substantially over the last
1.4 times book value. How could you possibly pay that much?
It's not as super expensive, but it's not super cheap. I think it's pretty fairly valued. I think there could be reasonable returns. I just think the top 3 that I mentioned offer better returns in the future. And my last one is Bank of America. Again, not totally bearish on Bank of America, but when I just stack it up against a Berkshire Hathaway, Bank of America is now trading at 1.1 times tangible book. For so long, the story around this stock was it's below tangible book, it's so cheap. When it gets to this valuation, it's now to the point where Bank of America is going to have to start delivering returns for its shareholders over the long term, the next 5-10 years. It's remained to be seen whether they can do it. I don't have total faith in the management team when I compare.
You're such a big fan of Brian Moynihan, I can't imagine.
Exactly. I think he's done a great job cleaning up the company. It certainly needed to be cleaned up. But they haven't shown that they're a great customer-centric business that really delivers for their shareholders and their customers without letting them down. So Bank of America, they're stuck in my doghouse for now. But if they show me something, maybe they'll move up a little bit.
There you go, Bank of America. Show David something. All right, to the Twitters. Starting off is from PNC News at PNC News. Now, this is a quote from their Senior Vice President and Director of Deposits Products. It's from a press release, so I'm going to put on my best press release voice. PNC's Todd Barnhart. We're excited about the future as branches serve more as retail outlets for financial advice and solutions.
Get you jacked up, right?
Right. Any quote from a press release, and I say this as someone who's written a lot of press releases in her life, are always going to be a little awkward and a little stilted.
Of course.
But anyway, so David, what's going on here with why should we be excited?
Well, I think a lot of investors, they look at banks with a lot of branches and say that's never going to work in the future. We look at a bank like Bank of Internet. They have one branch, it's their headquarters. So a lot of people think the future of banking is all mobile. But what PNC is focusing on here is beyond that just basic banking relationship. They want to turn these stores into high service stores so they can handle wealth management, business people can come in and talk to a banker about their business banking account, all those needs. So I think there still is definitely a space for branch banking for the next 5-10 years. I don't think they're going away anytime soon. I think when we talk about people's finances and businesses' finances, a lot of people don't want to do all of that over the internet. That face-to-face communication, I think, is still important. It's the question of rationalizing those branches. Where do they make sense? Closing the ones that don't make sense. So PNC, Bank of America, they're doing the same thing in terms of getting that high-level service into these branches and then migrating the lower end customers to those online platforms. So I'm excited that PNC is focusing on that branch network, and I think it can be a good thing.
All right, next up we've got downtown Josh Brown. He's at Reformed Broker. And I really don't want to screw up anyone's narrative, but Eurozone unemployment may have just peaked as well. So what he's talking about here is that the jobless numbers coming from the Eurozone have remained steady. Well, there's a slight drop in the number of jobless people across the region. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking about the numbers. Matt, what do you want to say about it?
Love Josh Brown. Love that he just loves to take that Louisville slugger and just smash, as he said, smash the narrative. You know, remember when the Eurozone was just on the brink of breaking up? Everything was horrible, and there was just going to be this big black hole over the ocean where the Eurozone used to be.
Just geography classes in the future got a lot easier.
Yeah,
for kids.
it's just this big black spot on the map. No, you know, the Eurozone is still not in great shape, but I mean, we've seen so much improvement, but I think it's stuck in people's minds that this is like going to be the big horrible thing holding back everything in the global economy. You know, I love when people are able to pull out these kind of data points as saying, hey, question your beliefs. Don't just assume that things continue as they were. So kudos to Josh for pointing that out.
All right. Final tweet is from CNN Breaking News, although it could have been from anyone. At CNN BRK, NSA leaker Edward Snowden gets temporary political asylum in Russia. So my question for you guys today is, if you were going to seek political asylum anywhere, Matt, do you want to start?
I'm going to Singapore. I've never been to Singapore, but from what I've heard it's very clean, it's very modern. I've heard the people are very great and welcoming. I think English is commonly spoken in Singapore, and the food. I mean, think about all of the countries around all this. I think I would have a great time in my political asylum in Singapore.
All right, David, where are you going? You need to seek political asylum. I don't want to know why, but where are you going?
Should everyone go to Russia? Isn't that Snowden's a good place to go? No, I think I would go to Croatia.
Oh, okay.
I don't could point on a map where Croatia is. So I've just
Great beaches.
So the smart people could probably point to where Croatia is. But if you just ask the normal person where's Croatia, I don't think a lot of. We talked about.
So you're thinking that way the govgovernment won't even be able to find you.
Exactly.
Croatia, where's that?
We talked about Robert Ben-Moshe earlier. I think that's where he was retired, if I'm not mistaken. He seemed to like it over there, so
he knows about the finer things.
I'll just stay in Ben-Moshe's villa and maybe he'll have fun asylum.
All right. Well, I think that covers it for now. On behalf of Matt Koppenfer and Dave Hansen, I'm Al, and we'll see you tomorrow on Where the Money Is.